For nearly 2,000 years, a single event has stood at the heart of the faith of billions, the crucifixion of Jesus. The Bible has described it vividly. Art has depicted it countless times, and sermons have analyzed its meaning. But beyond the sacred text, what does history truly say? Can we separate faith from historical fact to examine what really happened on that fateful day in Jerusalem? Prepare to re-examine everything you thought you knew about one of humanity's most pivotal moments. Welcome. In this video, we will not be debating theology or faith. Instead, we will act as historians. We will ask a specific and sharp question. Is the evidence for the execution of Jesus of Nazareth by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate historically reliable? To answer, we will use the methods of the historical discipline, analyzing the earliest source material, cross-referencing independent accounts, and critically examining skeptical arguments. The spiritual significance of this event is immense, but today we focus on just one thing: the evidence.
Part 1. The earliest accounts. What do the Gospels say? The foundation of any historical investigation into Jesus is the New Testament Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But what kind of documents are they? Historians categorize them as a form of Greco-Roman biography. Unlike modern biographies obsessed with objective, chronological facts, ancient biographies aimed to portray the character and moral essence of their subject. This means they are a blend of historical memory and theological interpretation, written to persuade readers of Jesus' significance. Critically, the Gospels were not written immediately. There was a period of oral tradition before the stories were written down. Mark, the earliest Gospel, is dated to around 70 AD, about 40 years after the events. Matthew and Luke were likely written in the 80s and John in the 90s. While this gap seems long, for ancient history, having multiple biographies written within 60 years of a subject's life, drawing on eyewitness traditions, is exceptionally good. Even earlier than the Gospels are the letters of the Apostle Paul, written in the 50s AD, just 2 decades after the crucifixion. Paul isn't interested in telling a narrative of Jesus' life, but he provides the earliest written testimony to the core Christian belief. He states in 1 Corinthians, "We preach Christ crucified," confirming that the crucifixion was the absolute, non-negotiable center of the Christian message from the very beginning. When we analyze these early Christian sources, a core story emerges with remarkable consistency. They all agree that Jesus was arrested by Jewish authorities in Jerusalem. He was handed over to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Pilate sentenced him to death. The official charge, intended as mockery, was King of the Jews, and the method of execution was crucifixion. The convergence of these key points across multiple independent early sources is a powerful argument for their historicity. While details like Jesus' last words may differ, the central narrative framework is firmly established by our earliest accounts. Part 2. External evidence. What did the enemies write? Relying only on Christian sources would be insufficient. To build a robust historical case, we need external, non-Christian confirmation. Fortunately, we have it. The most important testimony comes from the esteemed Roman historian Cornelius Tacitus. Writing his Annals around 116 AD, Tacitus described Emperor Nero's persecution of Christians after the Great Fire of Rome. He wrote, with disdain, "Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus." This passage is historical gold. Tacitus was an elite Roman who saw Christianity as a mischievous superstition. He had absolutely no motive to invent a historical anchor for a movement he despised. His confirmation is considered prime evidence precisely because it is hostile. Next, we have the first-century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. In his work Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus twice mentions Jesus. The first mention, the famous Testimonium Flavianum, is controversial because most scholars agree it was later embellished by Christian scribes. However, scholars have reconstructed what they believe to be the original core, which still states that Jesus was a wise teacher with many followers, and that Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, condemned him to the cross. More importantly, Josephus has a second, undisputed passage where he describes the execution of a man named James, the brother of Jesus who was called Christ. This casual reference is powerful because it takes Jesus' existence and importance for granted. These external sources, corroborated by others like the Greek satirist Lucian of Samosata, who mocked Christians for worshipping the crucified sophist, are critically important. They demonstrate that the crucifixion of Jesus was not a myth created by believers, but a known public event that was recorded and discussed in Roman and Jewish historical circles.
Part 3. Confronting Skeptical Theories. A complete inquiry must address counterarguments. The most famous is the swoon theory, which posits that Jesus didn't die, but merely fainted and later revived. This theory, however, collapses under historical and medical scrutiny. First, Roman scourging, which preceded crucifixion, was horrifically brutal. The flagrum was a whip with pieces of bone and metal designed to shred flesh. Many victims didn't even survive this initial torture. Second, crucifixion is an agonizingly efficient method of execution. Death typically occurs from asphyxiation, as the victim must constantly push up on the nails in their feet to breathe. Eventually, exhaustion makes this impossible. Third, Roman soldiers were professional killers. They knew when a person was dead. John's Gospel records a soldier piercing Jesus' side with a spear, resulting in a flow of blood and water, a detail some medical experts interpret as a sign of pericardial effusion, confirming death. Even if Jesus had survived by some miracle, he would have been a horrifically wounded, crippled man, hardly the figure to inspire a worldwide movement based on his triumphant victory over death. A more modern claim is that Jesus never existed at all, the mythicist position. This idea, however, is rejected by virtually all professional historians, classicists, and biblical scholars, simply because the multiple early and independent attestations from both friendly and hostile sources make his existence and execution historically certain.
Part 4. Conclusion. The verdict of history. So, where does the evidence lead us? It's not about one single piece of proof, but about the convergence of evidence. We have multiple, independent lines of testimony that all point to the same conclusion. Early Christian sources, the letters of Paul and the 4 Gospels all attest to the crucifixion. Hostile Roman source, Tacitus, confirms the execution under Pilate. Neutral, non-Christian Jewish source, Josephus, confirms the same. The verdict of history is therefore clear and represents an overwhelming scholarly consensus. The crucifixion of Jesus under Pontius Pilate is a historical fact. As the prominent secular scholar Bart Ehrman puts it, the crucifixion of Jesus is one of the most certain facts of his career. Finally,
it is crucial to return to the distinction we made at the start. History can tell us with a very high degree of certainty that Jesus was crucified. That is its limit. History cannot prove or disprove the theological meaning of that event. It cannot tell us if that death was an atonement for sins, nor can it confirm or deny the resurrection. Those questions belong to the realm of personal faith and philosophy. Our historical inquiry ends here, at the intersection of event and meaning. The evidence for the crucifixion is powerful and secure. What you do with that historical fact is a journey each of us must take for ourselves.